to Standing in the Sunlight with Cynthia Rose. We are all on an ever-unfolding unique journey. Join Cynthia Rose as she begins her unique perspective to all that is meaningful. Topics and personalities that support your path, bringing inspiration and passion in heart-centered ways to live a more fulfilling life. A down-to-earth and uplifting sharing of what it means to be spiritual, creative, and living life to the fullest by standing in the sunlight. Born an intuitive medium, Cynthia Rose is also an ordained minister, singer, astrologer, educator, and writer. She has studied the intuitive and healing arts for over 40 years. Rise up and stand in your sunlight now with Cynthia Rose.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm so glad you're here with me. I'm Cynthia Rose. And if you're listening back on playback, then welcome as well. Just a couple of things before we get started with our guest on the show today. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook at Cynthia Rose Medium. You can find me on Twitter at Cynthia Rose Medium. I think it's MED, and you can find me on Instagram at Cynthia Rose Medium. I'm pretty easy to find, and of course, CynthiaRoseMedium.com. And also, you can, please, I'd love it if you join me on my YouTube page. I would really love to have another 10 or 15 subscribers. So would love it if you would go over to Cynthia Rose Medium on my YouTube page, join me there. And you can listen to, I have a little playlist of all the OMTimes shows that will take you to the OMTimes shows. It's just a convenient way of staying in touch with all the shows if you want to listen to them again. Often people tell me they listen back. So I'm most grateful for those of you who have subscribed, and it's really easy to do. You just click a button. You don't have to worry much about it. It's pretty easy. And so today I wanted to tell you a little bit about our guest. Irene O'Garden has won or been nominated for prizes in nearly every writing category, from stage to screen, hardcovers, children's books, as well as children's books, should be able to talk, as well as literary magazines and anthologies. Her critically acclaimed play, Women on Fire, starring Judith Ivey, played sold-out houses at Off-Broadway's Cherry Lane Theatre and was nominated for a Lucille Lortel Award. Her new play, Little Heart, won her a Berilla Kerr Playwriting Fellowship and was awarded full development at the New Harmony Play Project. O'Garden was awarded a Pushcart Prize for her lyric essay, Glad to Be Human. Harper published her first memoir, Fat Girl, and Nirala Press recently published her book, Fulcrum Selected Poems, which contains her prize-winning poems, Nonfiction. Her poems and essays have been featured in dozens of literary journals and award-winning anthologies, including A Slant of Light, USA Book Award Best Anthology, and she's been honored with the Alice Desmond Award and Oppenheimer for her children's books. One busy lady. Welcome to the show, Irene.
Thank you so very much, Cynthia. It is a real pleasure to be here with you today. And I actually have a new book that just came out, which is the occasion of this conversation. One of the things that I hope we will get a chance to touch on, and I'm not sure if it is in there with your materials, but it's called Risking the Rapids, How My Wilderness Adventure Healed My Childhood. And
yes, and that's what we're talking about today, Risking the Rapids. I love that. That's the title.
Thank you.
So maybe we could talk a little bit like what made you decide to risk the rapids? Had you done this before, or how did this come about?
It was a new experience for me. I've always been drawn to the outdoors. It has always been a mighty and a healing presence for me. And I did not, as so many of us have, I didn't have the world's easiest upbringing. I was brought up in a very large family. I had 6 other siblings. And we were brought up in the Midwest in a rather repressed, traditional Catholic household. And my father was a local television personality, and my mother was a rather icy person. So there was a lot of jockeying and competition between the siblings, but there was also love in the house. It was not, in spite of the fact that there were rivers of martinis that were flowing, there was also some love and support. It was not a traditional, like, the neglect that we suffered was not like being hit or no food on the table, but it was a significant emotional lack of support, particularly from my mom. And although there were great things about growing up in that family, and I learned certainly to love words and the power and the meaning of words, it was emotionally a big challenge. And there were other issues going on, as people will see when they pick up the book. But what happened was that in 2014, I had an older brother die unexpectedly in a rather shocking way. And I'm very close to most of my family members now, but my 2 younger siblings, my younger sister and younger brother, most of all. And we were at a memorial service for that older brother who had been kind of problematic and a troubled soul. And my younger brother, Jim, goes out into the wilderness every year. He lives in Montana. He goes with his sons, with his nephews. They pack up and they go into the wilderness for a week or so. And I've always felt that I'd never really know him unless I went back with him. They call it going back into the back country. And this area of the country is the most remote place in the lower 48 states. It takes a day to get there on horseback to even start the river trip that he was proposing. So my younger sister and I looked at each other. She was 57. He was 60. I was 62 at the time. And we thought, let us do this together. Let us respond to our older brother's death in this way that would be bonding for all of us, and that would be with people who knew what they were doing in the wilderness, unlike myself. My brother had a great deal of experience. His sons have a great deal of experience. So I thought, and my sister, as I say, had been back once or twice. So we thought it might be a way to kind of heal some of the difficulties that we had grown up with by being in this beautiful natural setting. And what happened on the trip was that he proposed it as a river float trip. So we were going to be, we'd ride horses, but that would kind of be the tough day, would be the day-long horseback ride, and then we would camp. And then we would inflate these rafts and kind of float down the South Fork of the Flathead River in Montana. And so he said it's a beautiful time of year. There'll be these rock gardens. There'll be these, the scenery is amazing. I'll teach you how to fly fish. So I thought, let's just do this. Let's do this. And what started was proposed as this gentle, genial float trip turned into a rapids journey. It was much more of a whitewater rapids thing. No one was expecting the amount of water because of the snow melt. Nobody was expecting the tremendous storms that came up. So it turned out to be much more challenging than it was originally proposed. So I undertook the journey because I felt it would be healing, and it certainly was healing, and it did heal some old childhood wounds. But it was a much more challenging experience than any of us was expecting. So we followed that intuition to do it, though.
Wow!
Which I'm sure you know about, Cynthia.
Yeah. Yes, yes, and hats off to you because I don't think I would do that. So, but maybe if you'd known what it was going to be like, you might have pulled back too.
People ask me that question. It's of course impossible to answer. If I had known what was coming, it would have probably scared me so much that I might have pulled back. So I guess it was good that I didn't know. But I am so glad that I took that journey. And I think it's always good for us to take risks. I mean, it was a calculated risk. It wasn't like I was going out by myself or I was going out with people who'd never been out before. I think that would have been foolhardy. But to take a calculated risk, I think is a wonderful thing for us all because it moves us immediately into, first of all, a place of more self-respect. You know, you respect yourself even when you say you're going to take a journey. You're going to move out of your comfort zone. And, you know, risk is a different thing for different people, and there are different sizes. But I think it eventually, risk is actually what connects us to the thing that we want. So it's kind of that tightrope that we walk, but nobody starts walking the tightrope 100 feet in the air. You know, you start in a trusting place, and you get the help that you need in order to take a risk.
And I agree, and I love that you said you followed your intuition because, and you know that you took the you know, you went with it, which brought healing. Which I mean, we should talk about this in a minute, but I can think back of situations in my life, and some of the most difficult situations brought the most healing, but it's always up to the individual to take that or to reject it. And yeah, and so many people that you know, if you have said to me, well, yep, this happened and that happened, and what was that like? Do you know, most of the people that I love and respect and everything, they took sort of the gold out of it, or you know, the you know, they took the gold from what they got out of it, and that's life.
Yes, very wise, I think. Very wise indeed. And
I don't think we can go wrong. I just don't think we can go wrong if we're trusting our gut and our intuition. There is a reason, and that pulled you to it, and that's why you took the healing. And it also built that inner trust with yourself instead of searching outside of ourselves. That's, to me, that's just so. That's the way I live my life. So. Oh,
sure, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you know, someone, Cynthia, asked me recently, well, why do you think it's important to heal from our childhood wounds? And I thought, isn't that an interesting question? And I reflected on it. And what I realized is that as long as we are carrying, or it doesn't have to be just childhood wounds, it could be wounds sustained, you know, as an adult as well. It could be any kind of traumatic emotional experience. Why is it important that we heal from that? Well, for one main reason I think is important, other than the fact that it hurts and we're walking around in pain, and it may be seeping into our present-day relationships, or it may be coloring the way that we respond to life. In addition to that, I think that pain, when it is, especially when it's not directly dealt with, I think the pain keeps us from turning inward, because we're afraid we're going to meet that pain, and we're going to be afraid that, oh gosh, we were the source of that, and all. So we tend to then look outward, trying to avoid that pain. And I think so often this is what can lead people into, you know, addictive situations, or you know, the addiction of distraction, as we talk about so much going on these days. But once we turn and address that within ourselves and say, there is a way to heal this. I want to risk looking at it again. I want to speak with a qualified professional about it. I want to go digging around a little bit, or I want to speak with various people. I want to ask my dream life how it can assist me. Then we get less afraid to look within, and once we look within, of course, we know that's where the universal healing is. That's where the universal energy is. That's who we are these beings who are much more than the physical beings that we are intensely and rightfully focused on in this lifetime. I mean, we're physical for a reason. But it can get too misleading to think that that's all we are, or that our pain is all we are, or that avoiding pain is all we are. We are so, as you know, I'm telling you this, but that mighty source within us that is us is ready and willing to heal. And I think it's never too late to heal. And I also believe that it's never too soon to start.
I love it.
Never too soon to start.
I just think that's fantastic. You know, as you're talking about that question, I'm thinking to myself, you know, what caused me to want to grow through all the things I grew through? I mean, one, there was a part of me that always knew I was spirit. So, okay, I had that. But just like many people, I went through difficulties, and, you know, you think you are the pain you're having. You have to learn that you're not. And, you know, it was refined, but I was thinking of the massive men lead lives of quiet desperation. I think that was Thoreau.
Yes.
And I remember saying that, which was what many men lead lives of quiet desperation is what we used to hear. And
Emerson.
Was it? I thought it was Thoreau. Okay. So
so I could be wrong.
Well, we'll have to check that. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It's the statement. I remember saying that to myself, and then I remember like a grade 7 teacher saying, if you were to think about the life you want, if you were to draw a line for your life, what would it be like? And we could draw a line that was up and down, very fast and short. We could draw one that was very straight. We could draw one that was long and curvy. We had to draw what life we would like to have. Queued for the break already. Okay. Well, we'll finish this thought after then. We'll be back.
Wonderful.
Grab yourself a glass of water, stretch your legs. We're here with Irene O'Garden. Okay.
Your conscious lifestyle on steroids. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hi, this is recording artist and composer Yuval Ran, inviting you to a voyage through the chakras, a new double album of guided meditations to transform your life, a sublime musical medicine for nourishing inner peace and reaching to your higher virtues. Get it now at metamindfulnessmusic.com, METTA mindfulnessmusic.com.
Some knowledge belongs to us and us alone. The way our girlfriends walk, talk, touch their hair. Details that only a sister can know about her girls. But what about our other girls? The ones we carry with us every day. Our bond with our sister girls gives life. But knowing your breasts can save it. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. Brought to you by Susan G. Komen and the Ad Council.
Okay, we're back. So just finishing my thought, I was just talking about just the idea that I grew up sort of pondering as a kid and young adult, like, why do people give up? And why do we live in desperation? I mean, other people were thinking maybe other thoughts. These were the kind of things I'd be thinking, why do people give up? And why? And you know, you're rightfully talking here. I mean, risk. Let's talk about risk. Let's talk about your journey, because you're attacking fear in that way, aren't you?
Yes, but you know, it's funny. I tend not to use that kind of a verb because to me that sets up a conflict right there. I try not to attack. I guess I spent a lot of time attacking lots of portions of myself throughout my life, and I finally realized, well, it's just not a helpful model for me. So what I would say is, you know, I would, you know, face a fear or try to coax it a little bit into my awareness, to try and, you know, one of the things I have learned since this journey is that being afraid is really nothing to be afraid of. You know, it's a quite natural thing. I thought, it feels like something we're not supposed to feel. No, it's perfectly all right to feel afraid. But then you go forward and do the thing that you want to do, and knowing that that's not going to keep you from doing what it is your heart desires to do. And I also feel that, you know, risk is it's a natural part of our healing. I mean, even if we think about the healing of the body, if you get a paper cut, you know, the skin doesn't say, oh no, I got cut, I got injured, I better not repair myself, I might get injured again. No, it's the natural process of life to heal. So if we trust in our own inner healing, it allows us to then go towards experiences that we might, you know, that we might feel are a little risky. And I'm not just talking about going out into the wilderness, you know, in your 60s and camping and you know, making these physical challenges. I'm also talking about, you know, for some people, somebody who called me after she read my book said, you know, I was prompted to call my brother for the first time in years, because this is a book that's also about family dynamics and the family dynamics that I grew up with. And so that was a risk for her. To get on the phone and speak with that brother was a risk for her, but she felt empowered to do it by realizing that other people are taking risks as well. And I think that's another important thing to remember, is that if we really do decide that we want to commit to some kind of risk that will enlarge us as a person, there will be people to help. There will be people who inspire us. There will be people who have done what it is you're hoping to do, and you know, they will willingly give you a hand when you're trying to go in a new direction. And I think that trusting that inner growth that we were talking about a little bit earlier, Cynthia, the inner growth that is natural to us. You know, one of my favorite teachers is Jane Roberts and the work that she did with Seth. I don't know if you know his work, her work. Yeah, yes. Very, very important part of my understanding of creating the reality that I want to live in. And I find his vocabulary, her vocabulary, her way of looking at things is just so powerful. And one of the things that Seth says is, you know, we grew from a fetus to an adult without actually having to make everything happen. It's a natural process. And so I think there's very much a natural process of psychological and emotional growth that is comparable to the fetus growing into the adult. And so what the fetus growing into the adult feels are urges to grow, urges to get up and walk, urges to learn language. These are the natural areas that we want to explore as we are growing from a child to an adult. And I believe that the more we go within and understand what our impulses to growth are, the more enabled we will feel to stand up on 2 feet and take steps forward in the same way that a child does that, even though the child does fall. And yes, there are some risks that, gosh, that one didn't work out so well. But that's certainly also a natural part of exploring the world. And it's not the end of the world. If we fail at a risk, I mean, sometimes we don't get that job, or we want to run the 5K and we only do 3. It does not mean that we shouldn't risk. I think really the only failure is to take no risks at all. Then that's not really a failure. That's just waiting around for the right time, because eventually we will get it. But it's sort of like cheap elastic, our capacity to risk. It's like once we stretch it, it never returns to the size it was. It's permanently more accommodating. So at least that's what I found risking those rapids.
Wow. And you're talking to somebody here who considered myself younger as fearful, and I think fear froze me. It froze me when I was younger. And nobody ever would know that about me, and maybe that knows me now or whatever, but I went from really working with fear so I just have a great respect for people that, or maybe respect isn't the right word. It's thrilling and exciting to hear about someone else. I attacked fear in ways that would help me grow and evolve. And funny enough, I actually brought through a lady who, in her 70s, I was doing a mediumship demonstration, and I brought through a lady who, in her 70s, rode the rapids. And yeah, and I remember going.
That's really interesting. It's like the title.
And I was like, exactly. So it's that synchronicity. So I was like, okay, it's not ocean, it's not a lake. Because my hands were going up and down, and my hands were moving, and I said, "Is it the ocean she's on?" And the lady said, "No." I said, "Well, then why are my hands moving up and down like this?" And she said, "Well, because she rode the rapids." And I thought, in her 70s, like, wow, and you could feel the fierceness of this woman's. Like she had taken that with her to the other side. So I remember thinking, wow, I'd love to talk to someone like that. And here we are.
I love that. Look what you created.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. Well, I also feel that, we all have areas. Again, it doesn't have to be physical rapids. I think every life has rapids, and those are the places where life accelerates, and it moves completely unpredictably, and we don't know what's around the bend, and events are coming barreling towards us, and we're thrown out of our equilibrium, and we're dodging things and all of that. And I think the only way to really handle that is to begin to get accustomed to trusting ourselves. We need to trust. And it's great. The body is really helpful if you train the body, to feel confident in various, not just in athletic pursuits, but just in physical response. And you have some kind of practice. This is one thing that I find immensely helpful. You find some kind of practice that's a relaxation practice, so that you know that you can relax at any given moment. Even when stuff is coming at you, you try to relax enough to accommodate what's coming at you, and have enough faith in that deep, abiding, growing portion of ourselves to know that you'll get through it. You'll get through it. I mean, certainly, you must have taken some kinds of risks, Cynthia, to become public with the work that you do. Our culture, I believe, is in transition, but probably when you started, it might not have been as transitional as it was. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I started reading at 15 years old.
Yeah.
My mother was a reader who was Catholic, who had gone through, being accepted by some Catholics and shunned by some, but felt that she was doing work that was helping people, and so she, took it very seriously and prayed, and it was. But when she found out that I was doing it, she was like, oh, I don't want you to go through what I went through.
Yeah,
And I can remember as a young lady even going on dates, and I can remember going on a date. It was a guy, I quite liked him, and he said, well, you got to put the cards away because back then I read some cards, and he said, you can't do that sort of thing. And I was pretty shy, but it was like, okay, next.
Good. Yeah,
like,
you knew where your development was.
I knew. Yeah, there was one thing you could never take away from me was my spiritual development. I could be pushed, and that was like, you can't break that part of me because that's the part of me I'm going to nurture. But
yes.
Yeah, I can remember not really a lot of people, but I do remember there just being these attitudes where you didn't want to tell people that this was going on. And I can remember actually I had a healing journey. I can remember telling a doctor that I had gifts, but I didn't want to tell him what they were. And so after I told him, the next week he pulled this big crystal out of his pocket. And I later talked to him years later, and he said to me, I often feel family members come to me and help me with family history medically. And
wow.
And so he said, I don't do it publicly, but there are so many people that have these gifts that they're still kind of hiding them. And you're right, we're in this transition where either people say, oh, that's cool, I understand that, or or they quote something like they're trying to protect themselves from you, depending on what part of the country you're in.
Sure. But, the great thing about programs like yours, Cynthia, is that they help open up the dialogue across the country, across the world. I understand you broadcast around the world. And I think we are seeing swift transitions in people. People are beginning, as I say, risking the rapids. My wilderness journey, my childhood healed. That was one type of risk. But I think the risk that sometimes it takes to assert who we are, and I don't mean assert in an aggressive sense. I simply mean, just as you told that date, well, sorry, we won't be dating because I know who I am. I know the direction I am going in. That is the thing that keeps you upright in the boat. And that's the thing that keeps you grounded, as you are going through any kind of a healing journey, is just to continually return to that inner source of ourselves, which really will give us those answers. Another favorite Sethian quote of mine is that spontaneity creates its own order. And that's been very helpful as I go through life, just to go, oh, I don't have to know everything in advance. It's okay. And I don't have to plot out every single inch of the journey. The spontaneity can be trusted, and which did come in handy on this wilderness journey, and also as I was growing up in my way, because I was a rather spontaneous and creative child, and that was not easy for a mother who had been brought up much more strictly. She was brought up by her grandmother. My mother was. And so I think part of what's interesting, too, is as we go through our own healing, we can open up in forgiveness and love of people who maybe didn't have some of the grounding that we had. You know, for heaven's sakes, my parents did not have, yoga. Meditation was simply a Catholic form of prayer, which was fine, except that there was a lot of disbelief in the goodness of human beings, as it was taught back then. We were taught that human beings, you come in, you're born bad, and you've got to do everything you can to keep from sinning, and it's a very limiting set of beliefs. And of course, as we grow, we realize beliefs are ours to choose. We can choose beliefs that really nourish us, that help us move forward. And, I'm actually less interested now in whether I'm right about this. I was brought up in a household where it was important that you be right, so I had to, build my arguments carefully and all that. Now I realize I don't care whether I'm right. Is the life that you propose for yourself, are the beliefs that you are basing your life on practical? Are they life-sustaining? Are you hoping that these are the beliefs that are true? Or do you feel like they're going against your nature? Are they limiting you? And if they're limiting you, they're like blocks. They're like children's blocks. We are just playing with these beliefs. So toss them. If those beliefs aren't working for you, just toss them out. Find ones that are working. Well, what ones have worked for me? Well, the idea that we create our own reality and we get what we focus on, I don't care whether it's true or not. When I behave in the way that belief leads me to believe, it's like, okay, what am I focusing on? Okay, if I'm really focusing on this, I'm creating this. And it has allowed me to actually focus on having several books published, having an off-Broadway play done, getting awards for various books, having a 40-year marriage that I couldn't be happier with, living in a nice house. And all of those things come from the basic beliefs that we look at about ourselves and say, do I deserve this? How can I serve? How can I, so it's a whole series of questions that we can continue to ask ourselves, or we can respond to emotions that come up in ourselves and say, well, where did that come from? Well, why do I feel that? And then see if the belief behind that emotion is actually serving us or not. Have you ever found that to be so?
I love that you said, that, because when you're talking about creating your own reality. So as a young adult, I went to a workshop and we learned all about, we're running out of time already. Oh my gosh. Okay, we'll be back. I'm going to share that. So we'll be back very shortly with Irene O'Garden, author of Risking the Rapids and so many more. Okay.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Tune in to The Practical Intuitive, Mind, Body, Spirit for the Real World with me, host Robin Fritz, Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 Eastern. I'll cover personal and business intuition, animal communication, mediumship, space clearing, past life regression, shamanic insights, energy healing, soul choice, and more, all to help you tap your own intuitive and healing skills. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Hi, this is New Age Grammy winner Paul Avgerinos. Thanks for listening to OMTimes Radio, and please support my peaceful healing music with a purchase at iTunes, Amazon, or wherever you shop for fine music. Just put my name into the search engine, Paul Avgerinos. A, V like Victor, G like George, E-R-I-N-O-S. You can also visit me at roundskymusic.com. Thanks for listening, and I'm wishing you the brightest of blessings.
GTG, BRB, OMW, be there in a few. You may think that these kinds of texts are fine because of their length, and you can easily send them at a stoplight. But no, answering one text can take your attention away from the road for 5 seconds. And traveling at 55 miles an hour, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Make good decisions, don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Okay, we're back. Who were we talking about? What was it we were talking about?
I think it was. You were right in the middle of a thought about that. It was kind of growing out of your younger years, and we were talking about beliefs and limiting beliefs and how we can cast them aside.
Yes. So the idea when you said the way you looked at it, I thought that was really interesting and important because, I mean, to me, it's just fact that we create our own reality, but there are still people out there that wonder if it's true or not heard of it. And so if I go back to when I did this workshop where we were taught how we create our reality with our thoughts, and, you know, I remember having a discussion with a lady who was probably 10 years my senior at the time, and she said to me, you know, that she kind of got a little bit hard on me and said, well, you're in resistance to this. I got to the point where I thought, okay, what if I were just to say, who cares if it's true or not? Like you said, let me operate from the place of let's see what happens and see how that works for me. And that made all the difference in the world.
Yep. Oh, I completely agree with you. Same thing happened to me. And then you get playful with it. You know, you don't have to start with your biggest deals, you know. You start with, all right, well, can I create a parking space for myself? Let me see if I can do that today. One of the things that I had fun with, and I think it is good to retain a sense of playfulness about this. One of the things that I played with was like, well, all right, if I create my own reality, I want a singing voice. I didn't really have a good, solid singing voice. And, you know, so I said, all right, that's what I want. And I sort of said it, and I sort of imagined what that would be like. And then I kind of forgot about it, which I think is also an important part of the process after a while. You know, like you think about it maybe 5 minutes a day, the thing that you'd like to create, and then you let it go. You don't watch for the little sprouts to come up and then uproot them saying, well, are they growing? Right? You have to let them grow in their own time. So, but one day I found myself, I used to go out and walk my dog in the woods, and I was singing at the top of my lungs because no one could hear me. And I began to do that just for fun because I didn't have to think about how anybody was responding to how it. And then, you know, after a couple of months, I went, oh, my gosh, I have a singing voice. I got a singing voice. Isn't that amazing? So I was quite happily surprised by that. So I began to play with certainly with other things, and I just find it is definitely, if our listeners have not really begun to explore that for themselves, I highly recommend you begin to play with that idea. And as I say, don't start with something gigantic, you know, because that seems undoable, but start with something small. You know, one of the things that I remember Seth talking about is, you know, when you're trying to, for example, get used to the idea of abundance in your life, you know, and say, well, you know, I'd like to have a little bit more money. He doesn't say, well, sit there. I mean, you can sit there and watch floods of money come down on you, but he said you must also behave in a way once a day as if the reality that you want to create is already present. So he said when you go to the store, buy a soup that's 2 cents more than the soup that you would ordinarily buy, because you're putting a little physical faith into the energy of the reality that you want to create. And so that's very helpful. But and I will say that as I was taking this wilderness adventure that's described in Risking the Rapids, there came a time when I had to cross over some very treacherous rocks. And it was terrifying. And I was with my sister, and we were cold, we were miserable. They were round, slimy river rocks, and it was like, I don't know how I'm going to get over these rocks. We have to be there at that shore, and I don't know how. And it was like, it took 20 minutes to cross these. And all I could do was like, I create my own reality. My present is the point of power. I create my own reality. I am safe. I am fine. I have balance. I was chanting that to myself as I was crossing these rocks. And I'm actually here to tell the story. So it works in many different ways. But as we begin to incorporate that in our daily thoughts, it is such an empowering thing.
Absolutely. I love it. Absolutely. I love in our language, so many like yourself, I believe I'm this way, and I was listening to somebody yesterday, is that, the idea of adult, we're often, at least we were raised, that you're a child and then you're an adult. Mm-hmm. Like as if we arrive to some place where we need to, have all the answers, and it's just not true. Exactly.
Right. I mean, talk about a limiting belief. That's like, oh, great. So you mean when now we're done? So, and a lot of people buy that. The beliefs about aging that have been reflected in this culture have not been very helpful. Now, that's why, here I am talking about at age 62 going out into the wilderness, because I think the ideas that sometimes are given to us about aging are really not helpful and practical at all. I am actually in much better physical condition than I have ever been in my life before, and I continue to do things that surprise me. It's not like I feel I have to be foolhardy, but I'm like, no, my vision is excellent. I'm completely without any medications. So I think the beliefs that we have generate themselves into our bodies. So it does behoove us, especially as we age. Brand new experiences are flooding into my life right now. Really interesting, positive peak experiences as a result of having published this latest book, and as a result of having taken the journey that helped me heal those final painful things. I am meeting really interesting people, and this is kind of the way I view getting older. It's almost like a second adolescence. You get a whole bunch of new energy, and you have a whole bunch of new experiences to focus on, and I couldn't be happier to be getting older.
Yeah, me too. I mean, there's all these sort of rules and regulations, and everyone tells us the way it is, and I think maybe if there is anything such as adulthood, it's when we realize that that's simply not true, that we choose what it is we want to, the way we want to see things, and we're simply limited by the way we choose. There's no need for having all the answers we're here to live, to experience, and when we're done. But there can be this, like, what I love about your book, I'm interested in reading it, is that idea that, if we're not truly in that moment, living in that moment, then how much of life are we skimming our life? Are we living our life?
Yeah. It can be a kind of half-life. And the issue with that is it's not bad. It's not bad to not live fully. It's just not wonderful. It is not. And our joy, the inner joy in ourselves, is our birthright. We are made to be joyful beings. All of creation is made joyful. all of creation is sacred. All of creation is alive. And we are part of that. And, look at any animal. Any animal is really happy to be the animal they are. So I think just some old beliefs that don't work for us impede that in us, and we just become aware of them. We just let them go and say, all right. I mean, one of the other ones that I had to let go of, one of my issues growing up was I didn't know how to comfort myself in this neglectful, and I also had a brother who was very much a bully, and I didn't know how to comfort myself. So by the time I was trying to get in my first communion dress, I was dieting because of course I was overeating, and this sent me into years of overeating and eating disorders, and I was over 200 pounds, and I was I didn't know how to handle the pain that I was feeling. But at some point I had to go, you know what? I can either believe that I'm going to be this way for the rest of my life, or I can just hold an image of myself as a happy, healed, healthy woman, and to be at peace with all of this. And it did not happen overnight, I will tell you, but I can completely tell you that transformation has entirely taken place, and that such transformations need your belief in their ability to happen. And other siblings of mine, as I mentioned in Risking the Rapids, other siblings of mine had their own issues. I have a brother who had crippling pain. My sister suffered from tremendous anxiety. I had a brother who went to AA, and another sister who was a nun and began drinking in the convent. And yet, through the years, we have found ways of healing, but we can't heal if we don't believe that we can heal. But once we believe it's never too late to heal, and that we have the capacity within ourselves to know which direction to go, to know which risk to take, once we believe that, we open up those pathways that are naturally there, hoping that we'll grow in the direction of our highest fulfillment, which is what we're all allowed, what we're all deserved. As I say, like an animal, like a happy animal. It's our nature.
Yes, and the difference between an animal in pain, per se, and a human is that the animal's in pain, it doesn't go and psychoanalyze the pain. It is in pain, right? It's there in the moment. And I have a long history. I used to have a lot of pain for years. And,
oh, my.
And I healed from that, and I had a belief I would heal from it, and after 20 years of the doctors saying this is the way it's going to be, I just got to that darkest before dawn corner where I thought I would just, okay, well, I surrender, and but then I started, doing, I had done lots of alternative things, and there really was a need for a different Western intervention.
Oh, of course. No, I'm not judging that at all. I think it serves if you...
But what I needed to do was I started to imagine myself different than the one that I was always trying to work against getting a personality of someone in pain, which I definitely had. And then I had to say, okay, what would I be like if I didn't have this anymore?
Oh,
and so
great.
I was very proactive, maybe too much on the other end, because I had to learn limitations. I always say sometimes it sucks to realize you're a spirit in a body. but I had my lessons, and I wouldn't take any of it away. But the pain is a very interesting thing in our culture because we want to numb ourselves from the pain, and we want to make a judgment about the pain. And actually, there's a lot of lessons in that pain. And what was mesmerizing to me as I was studying this energy work and working with energy, I somehow could feel aware of everything around me and in the world and what everybody was feeling, and feel no pain at all. And yet I knew my body was in pain, and sort of. I can't really describe it in words, but the minute that something would change, I'd feel it. And I came to understand that some of that was my empathic abilities. Well, I still don't relate to when people say, oh, well, you were taking on somebody else's stuff. Because if I'm taking it, it's mine. That's just it's the way I operate. But, if anybody else needs to look at it another way, good for them. It didn't work for me because it's a victim statement for me to say it's somebody else's, because now I can't do anything about it because it's not mine. So that didn't work for me. But it's really interesting. You went into the pain in a sense. You're risking those rapids and going to go into something, but even your inner self guided you into a journey. Thankfully so, without the worry, with kind of like, I'm going to have an experience, and you got the gold.
Yeah, I do feel that. I do feel that I did. And I think it's not that I'm such an extraordinary person. It's just that if we are playful with these ideas, we are meant, as the human race is meant for this transformation. We are meant to be creating the world, the whole world that we can imagine, that we can feel of the way human beings can relate to one another, the way children can grow up. We are meant to be creating that, and each time we do it imaginatively, we are putting a brick in that city. We're putting a brick in that inner city.
Irene, tell people where your website. We've got busy. Yeah.
You can find me at IreneO'Garden.com. You can find me on Facebook at Irene O'Garden, poet and author, and you can find me on Instagram at IOGarden.
So go buy her book and risk the rapids with her. I love talking with you. It was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you so
much. Great delight, Cynthia. I enjoyed you too. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.